This is City Talk. I'm Eric Schmidt. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a little more than a year since life as we knew it came to a screeching and unsettling halt. The impact of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic wasn't really known a year ago, but today, as we record this edition of City Talk, we have a pretty good idea of what that impact has been. Like many Oregon cities, the city of Hillsborough had to adapt to the pandemic in real time. Joining us now on City Talk to talk about the state of the city is the mayor of Hillsborough, Steve Calloway. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
As we look back and as we look to the present and wonder about the future, how do you think Hillsborough has handled the impact of the pandemic?
You know, I think we've handled it really quite well. And I have to say, I look around the whole region, and I think all of our jurisdictions have done really a great job of responding because, you know, there's no playbook for this. You're kind of making it up as you go through, you know, and that's where, you know, those partnerships come into play such an important role. You know, as we work with our school district, as we worked with the county, as we worked with the chamber and so many other partners, the time to create that relationship of trust needs to be done before there's a crisis and a pandemic. And so fortunately, all of those great relationships were in place. So it really allowed us to work together, to hit the ground running, and to really work hard to meet the needs, both in the moment, but also the needs that we knew were going to be coming that we frankly didn't know exactly what they might be.
Yeah. One of those partnerships has been with the federal government as well. In the recent legislation passed by Congress, I think there's $4.3 billion set aside for the state of Oregon and its local jurisdictions. What's Hillsborough's share going to be, and what are you going to do with that new money?
So we are scheduled to receive about $18 million. And you acknowledge our federal government. And I do want to say thank you to Congresswoman Bonamici and our senators, Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley, for their work to help our state and our cities, our communities, you know, receive these funds that we can use to support those who are still struggling. So as a city, we are looking at our council priorities to say that's going to be the framework through which this money is used and utilized. So we are going to be strategic with it and careful and make sure that it matches the priorities of our community going forward.
Are there a lot of strings attached?
You know, I haven't seen, you know, all the details. I know it was a pretty thick bill, and so I would imagine that there are some pretty clear requirements. But you know, that's where we'll. So as we look and determine how we're going to spend it, we'll make sure that it's done within the parameters that are set, and we'll look to see how can we maximize the effect of those dollars by partnering, you know, with other jurisdictions. There may be something that, you know, Hillsborough and the city of Beaverton can do together, or, you know, Hillsborough and the county, Washington County, can do together. So, you know, we're open, you know, to ideas and really creative ways to use this to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our communities.
But it's badly needed. You can use it.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, when I look at what we've done in the past year in response to COVID, we have done 5 rounds of small business grants to the tune of about $1.6 million. And there were hundreds and hundreds of small businesses that received 2 and even 3 grants. And that helped keep the lights on. That helped keep a rent payment made. We have used money to help offset utility costs because people had a hard time keeping up with water bill. And we have not turned off water in a single household, a single business for over a year due to non-payment. And that's our commitment, that when times are tough, we're going to be there as a partner with our community members and with our businesses. And so, you know, as we look forward to see, okay, what do we need in order to jumpstart? What do we need to try to help, you know, make people whole? And again, how can we use this in position to go forward?
I'm going to read between the lines a little bit on that one, Mayor.
Sure.
I get what you're saying is that the economy was impacted by the pandemic in Hillsborough, but probably not to the point of sending it into a depression or a recession.
You know, and I'll go back. I think it was Ronald Reagan who said, you know, a, a depression is when you're out of a job, a recession is when your neighbor's out of a job. So, when, so as we have worked to support our small businesses, we there are some that have really been hit incredibly hard. When you are when you're a restaurant on Main Street in downtown Hillsborough, and all of a sudden it's all takeout. And I think of one of our city councilors, his restaurant, Reedville Cafe, and they spent tens of thousands of dollars for plexiglass and for awnings and heaters, and yet at the same time they were still restricted on the numbers of people that they could serve, and so all of the overhead that people and all of the money that they spent just to try to be able to function, was quite a burden. And so we had quite a few small businesses, restaurants, hotels, that were really impacted all the way across. So, there were some segments of our, of our economy where people had a good year. There were some retail and, that entrepreneurial spirit that helped lead people to create their businesses in the first place. They use that entrepreneurial spirit and marketed in different ways, or they sold in different ways. And they had great years, maybe the best year that they've ever had, while others had the worst. So, it really depends on the business and it depends on the sector.
Yeah. On balance, would you say that the economy is ready to grow again in Hillsborough, grow big time?
I think we're going to see a slow, steady growth. I don't think that we're going to see a quick 180-degree turnaround, to the good, like we saw a year ago when everything shut down and it was pretty much 180 degrees, from the longest economic expansion to literally stopping overnight. It's going to take, the things that I've seen, Eric, have said, it could be 18 months to 2 years before we get back to where we were pre-pandemic. But as long as we're making slow, steady growth, that's, we're headed in the right direction, and that's what we're looking to see.
Put your mayor's hat on once more and talk about the societal impacts, the social impacts that the pandemic has had on your constituents. There are a lot of people who got bummed out by this whole thing, and they may not come back. They may not recover. There are others who have figured out a way to thrive and go forward. Where are you when it comes to putting all of that on a spectrum for the city of Hillsborough?
So we really worked hard to identify those individuals who were struggling during the pandemic. I'm trying to think, it was probably 34,000 pounds of food that we delivered to people's doors, food to go. So when people were not comfortable because of health situations or whatever, constraints to go get food from food banks, we would bring it to them. For individuals who, again, with utilities, couldn't pay their utility bills, we made sure those were covered. We have our eviction moratorium in place. So everything where we knew that there were challenges, we worked hard to try to address those really in a proactive sense. With so many kids being involved with distance learning, and we know that kids are beginning to move back into the schools now. But for so many months, kids were only at home, and so our library worked hard to change how they offered services. And one of the things with that is we had 20 mobile hotspots that you could check out from the library, and for 2 weeks at a time, which meant those that did not have internet access could go to the library, check out a hotspot, and now they had that for 2 weeks. And so we've really worked then to address the needs that we recognized as well as the needs that we anticipated. Throughout the pandemic, Eric, we also had a respite center set up at one of the hotels. So those who had were COVID symptomatic or had a mild case of COVID where it did not require hospitalization and they were homeless or housing with instability with housing, they could have a place to stay at that hotel. We also had a safe camp for RVs and for tents. We had a 24/7 shelter over in the Sunset Esplanade area where it helped people have a place to stay dry when it was raining, or stay cool when it was hot. And so, and then we just closed up our shelter that we had downtown that was housed in our civic center. And so we had that space for about 30 people up through the middle of March. And so we have really worked for whatever the need might be to make sure that we're addressing it.
I think it's fair to say that the way that City of Hillsborough provided vital public services has changed rather dramatically over the past year.
Absolutely. We still are providing all of our city services, but we've just changed the delivery of those city services. Many of our employees have worked from home and continue to work from home, but there is still access, for if you need planning, all of that is available digitally. Our library did great things to make sure that you could still browse online, you could pull up and you could get your books or materials and have those. Our Parks and Rec provided YouTube videos so people could have activities, at home by watching, what our Parks and Rec department was doing. At Jackson Bottom, there were a number of activities that were provided as well. And even with and I love this one, our senior center provided Zoom tutorials for our seniors who were now having to, the best way to communicate with family members was through Zoom. And it's like my dad, who's 93, he doesn't know how to set up Zoom meetings with family members, but he knows how to click and join a meeting. And so, just providing assistance, to individuals to make sure that this time of isolation, this time of upheaval really still has some predictability, and we're still able to have, the face-to-face engagement like we are now, even if we're not having it one side of the table to the other.
Has this forever changed the way that city services will be provided in the future?
That's hard to say. We certainly are looking at trends and seeing how can we take advantage of what we've learned and keep it and maintain that. And a perfect example is, of course, all of our city council meetings are on Zoom. And we are seeing a lot more people engaging with our city council meetings because of that. So, now I can hardly wait to get back into our council chambers. But when we do, we don't want to lose all of those individuals who have been watching our Zoom meetings, participating from their house, and not all are able to watch it on TVC TV when it's live. But just having, being able to set it up on their computer, their iPad or whatnot, while they're cooking or while they're doing different things. We don't want to lose those individuals. So we're looking at a way that maybe we can do a hybrid where, we gather in person, but we're still able to present it, video, real time, and offer people the opportunity to engage with us that they have now on Zoom.
You and I have talked in the past, and community engagement has always been a big issue for you because you want more people to be involved in the community. And now you have this opportunity going forward. Your State of the City address was designed so that you could engage more people in the process of reporting to the constituents and more people be able to watch it. Are we at a cusp now where we're going to see more people involved in community affairs, or is this going to be one of those hit and miss kind of propositions and goodbye later on?
It depends, what is the motivation, for people's involvement? Sometimes, when there's controversial issues, people are very, very involved. And so, and sometimes when that issue is resolved or over, there's less engagement. But I think a lot of the folks that are involved now that have been, watching us or participating online month after month after month after month are more likely to stay involved. So we just need to make sure that we are watching for those trends and to make sure that they are staying engaged and that we're working hard to keep their engagement. One of the things that we've done, during this time is, we have a Facebook page that is Spanish language, and, recognizing that that's one of the main venues, if you will, or one of the main avenues that our Latino population engages with the city is through Facebook, and it's not so much through email and through Twitter or some things like that. So we have really prioritized, our Spanish language Facebook page, and so we have, I think, 1,300 individuals that have, that have subscribed to that or liked it, if you will, and now are getting a lot of real-time updates on that page. So, we look to expand that to make sure that as we capture people, we're keeping them and we're increasing from that.
While we're on that subject, Washington County and the cities in Washington County, by and large, including Hillsborough to a large degree, are, according to many studies and surveys, the most diverse county and cities in Oregon. Diversity, equity, and inclusion have become more than buzzwords for local governments. In fact, they've become aspirational and real goals. How is Hillsborough nurturing its growing diversity with all of this stuff that's going on?
Right. Over 40% of Hillsborough identifies as a person of color. So we are as I understand it, the most diverse large city in our state. And, and of course, being right next to Beaverton, very similar demographics. And so it is a conscious decision with our, with our policies, with our, practices to make sure that we are including, that we're focusing and prioritizing our communities of color. One of the ways that we've done that, and we've talked before about Highlight, our city's broadband network, and so we have targeted the least connected part of our city. It's a census tract that, along with Rockwood over in East Multnomah County, those are the two least internet connected census tracts in the entire metro region. So that is why that's a priority for us, and a phase one rollout in that area is because we want to make sure that kids and families have access to the internet, because that's an essential utility. We all recognize it, and that's absolutely been driven home during the pandemic. So that's something that we're doing. This year's Community Reads book is called In the Country in the Country We Love. And Diana Guerrero, who's an actress, it's her autobiographical a description of growing up as an undocumented, within a family and an undocumented family. And so that is a extremely powerful book. And so as we read that as a community, it does increase that understanding, and it does increase that awareness. And it's a book that's especially important to me because when I was at Brown Middle School as a principal, my last year before I became mayor, one of the 8th grade girls said, "Mr. Calloway, I want you to read this. This will help you understand my experience and my family." And you read it and you go, wow, what an amazing young lady, the resilience, the inspiration, that I learned about her and her family through reading this book. So, that's an example. And then we have businesses, Bag and Baggage, for instance, which is the only professional theater west of Portland. And so many of their offerings look at these issues of race and equity. And the Hillsborough Hops have Los Soñadores, the dreamers, because everybody who's playing baseball has that major league dream. And every one of us in the stands, we have our own dreams. And it's also homage and recognition of all of our, all of those who are here as immigrants and their dreams as well. And so, when you begin to see it, it's not just a city policy, but it's implemented throughout the city and it's embraced, by our community. It really is just a wonderful thing. And in fact, then we as cities work together, and Carlos Quesnel is the new Mexican consul for all of Oregon and Southwest Washington. And so we had a meeting for him a few weeks ago, socially distanced, and we invited some of the representatives from Virginia Garcia and from Central Cultural and from, different, and Cornelius and Forest Grove, because it was important to us that we share with the new council all of the amazing things that have gone on for generations here in Western Washington County. And so he could experience and learn how our community has embraced and supported. He had the opportunity to meet some of our Latino elected leaders and really help him understand how we are supporting our Latino community and how our Latino community is strong and vibrant and resilient. And that's one of the ways that we help him and each other understand, just the value of all of our community. And that's where we're putting our actions with our words and our actions with our, priorities in our city council, priority list. Again, is just by making sure that we're walking that talk on a daily basis.
And the challenge will be to continue and nurture that discussion.
Absolutely. But that's, and we have a lot of folks who are watching and they're holding us accountable to make sure that we are continuing to do this, because it will be an absolute failure on our part, not just personally, but, civically, if we don't continue to move forward with these measures, with these priorities and these actions that either have begun during this last year or in the last few years moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, before the pandemic halted life as we know it, Hillsborough was one of the, if not the fastest growing cities in Washington County and in Oregon, for that matter. Has the growth rate been impacted by the pandemic? Have you seen fewer people moving in, fewer businesses expressing an interest?
It's been interesting. We've had businesses start, in Hillsborough, and I can think of 3 that have opened up in Hillsborough in this last year. And so we are still seeing people with that, as I mentioned before, that spirit of entrepreneurial, that entrepreneurial spirit, who, they have that optimism, they have that, just that commitment and dedication to implementing their ideas. And so, we've seen businesses start. I know in South Hillsborough, when the pandemic came, they began to lower some of the sales goals that they had for 2020, but they exceeded many of their original goals that they had set. So I think that we're seeing more and more people, continue to move. And and some of that is people from out of the area. Some of that may be people who are choosing to move from Portland out to the suburbs. But we are continuing to see, really strong growth.
Any kind of growth is going to put pressure on the city's infrastructure and on the services that the city provides. Do you think that the city is in a position now to be able to embellish the infrastructure and provide the services that are needed?
I do, because we've been planning, for this growth. So in South Hillsborough, we have parks that are already there and parks that are going to be developed, and we have the staff to support that. We are in the process, along with Tualatin Valley Water District and the city of Beaverton, putting in the Willamette Water Supply Project, bringing water up from the Willamette River down by Wilsonville. And that is our 50-year water supply. It's a redundant water supply when, Cascadia hits and Scoggins Dam is impacted. So, we are putting in, the infrastructure not only now, but also for 50 years from now. And part of the way that we've done it in South Hillsborough with the water, for instance, is we put in the huge water pipes before we get the connecting pipes from the south, because we didn't want to have to tear up brand new roads in a year or two. So all of those pipes are in place and underground. And when I say pipes, we're talking the 60-inch pipes. Those are in the ground, and they will be connected when those pipes arrive from the south. So, we are putting the infrastructure in, again, whether it's water, whether it's roads, whether it's broadband, all of that infrastructure is being laid. And so we're not caught off guard or by surprise with any of it. We've been planning for it, and we're prepared.
Vital public services are the key to success in local government, aren't
Hmm.
they?
And
I
absolutely.
have to ask you
And
this. uh,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going
No,
to
go
say,
ahead.
and so, I've talked about, so that was kind of the infrastructure, but as you talk about the services, when people call the city, they get an answer. When they send an email to the city, they get a response. And so we just have such great, great employees in our city. And so whether it's planning and transportation, public works, our libraries, our parks, and now I start listing, and I know I'm going to forget some, and but we just have great employees, and they are absolutely, committed. And so while the delivery model has changed in the last year, the quality of service has not changed at all. And again, I look at like our library and our parks and which are very public facing, and the way that they have responded, just to and adapted in order to continue to provide those services that our community wants and our community expects has really been impressive.
It has indeed. As we record this program, Mr. Mayor, there's a city in Colorado of similar size and
Mhm.
similar appeal to that of Hillsborough. That city is reeling and dealing with a mass shooting of 10 people at a local supermarket. One of the
Yeah.
victims is a police officer. Again, we seem to be at the nexus of the discussion about what we expect from our police, our law enforcement, if you will. The discussion is unfolding in Hillsborough as it is in communities across the
Mhm.
country. But are you going to have to take it to a new level with all of the activity that's been going on? What are you hoping will develop from this next discussion about your police department and how it operates?
So, we are in the process of evaluating and analyzing all the data. We had a work session this last week where we looked at all the stop data, who was pulled over, where, and when, and analyzing to see were there disproportional stops, that are inconsistent with our population and demographics. And so we are examining, the we're and drilling down to make sure that we're not seeing patterns that that would have us uh, concerned, if you will, or showing us patterns that demonstrate bias and implicit or explicit bias. So, we've had a number of community conversations along those lines to hear from our residents. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What have you experienced? What do we need to be aware of? And so we've had really thorough conversations all the way through. And Eric, as you talk about the 10 victims yesterday, and and one of them, as you mentioned, was a police officer. And so you have the absolute heroic actions of one. And yet at the same time, in Minnesota, they're seating a jury, for the trial for the officer that murdered George Floyd. And so you have these extremes, these two instances that are juxtaposed to each other. And so, and I think that in the middle, of that, you have so many law enforcement officers and their families, and they put their lives on the line every single day. And so we just need to make sure that we are, have the right people doing the right work, and that we are providing the support, and that we are, not putting on the police department or on law enforcement, the enforcement or the response to problems that we don't know what to do with or how to deal with in other ways. And so, I look at our homeless population, and we have officers who are specifically trained, to deal with those individuals. Our school resource officers are specifically trained and chosen to work within our schools. And we had a situation in Hillsborough recently where it was hours of kind of negotiations and engagements, conversations, where somebody was finally able to be helped and get the mental health services that this individual needed, and it could have ended in in a much more tragic way. But with the hours of patient and painstaking response, it had a much more fortunate outcome. And those aren't the kinds of instances that are, or stories that are readily reported on, because they tend to be dealt with, and they're quieter. And so and so as we look at how do we provide public safety, it's all of those pieces that I've mentioned, making sure that we're looking at the data, making sure that we have the right people doing the right job, that there's good training, that there's accountability, and that we're providing opportunities for people to share, as well as for us to make sure that we're listening.
I'm really glad you mentioned the mental health aspect of the police work, because that's a critical component to what local police have to deal with on a daily basis.
It is. And and one of the other things then is to also make sure that they're getting, the emotional support, that's necessary in the mental health, because those are huge burdens, that they're bearing as well. And so we need to make sure that they are in a good place, so that they can do the job, that we expect them to do and that we're asking them to do. So we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can on, with all of the parts of the equation.
Yeah, it's a big puzzle, that's for sure. One last question, Mayor Steve Calloway
Yes,
of Hillsboro, Oregon. Are you comfortable with Washington County's lifting of some of the COVID restrictions?
I am, and I'm glad that we're seeing the lifting of the restrictions. We've been diligent and disciplined in adhering to these, and I think we're seeing it pay off. And I will tell you, I'm so excited to begin to be around people again. I miss people, and I'm looking forward to going to Hillsboro Hops games. Even right now, I know it's about 15% capacity. It will obviously grow, but the Hops have moved up 2 levels. They're now advanced A. It's a longer season, and I can hardly wait to get back into the ballpark. I'm very hopeful, fingers crossed, that maybe by July we'll be able to have our 4th of July parade again. And we missed that this last year. And in farmers markets and Tuesday night markets, there's so many places that we have taken for granted, and I think as we come together again, it'll be good for us. It'll be unifying opportunities for us, and it'll just be good to see dear friends and just be back within each other's within the company of each other.
I hear that. Use the stadium for something besides vaccines, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Steve Calloway is the mayor of Hillsboro, Oregon. Mr. Mayor, as always, a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on City Talk.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for giving us, cities throughout Washington County, as well as county electeds, the opportunity, and county staff, the opportunity to visit with you, but also the opportunity to engage with viewers in a that we might not be able to otherwise. So, we're very grateful to you and the TVC TV staff for making these possible.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We really appreciate that.
You bet.
And we'll take that clip to the general manager. Thank you for that.
Okay.
This is City Talk. I'm Eric Schmidt. Thanks for joining us.